we go. Welcome to Voting in 2020, presented by the League of Women Voters of the Lower Cape Fear. Our panelists today will be Gail Bromley from the Fair Elections Action Team, Jeanette Fields from New Hanover County Voter Services, and Barb Burrell from Brunswick County Voter Services. And I'll be introducing our speakers, and I am Marla Barthen. I am the membership chair. I'm gonna let Gail get started here.
Hi. My point today is to try to tell you about your options for early voting in 2020. They aren't all that different from previous years, except there's some tweaks that have been put into the system due to COVID-19. So you have options for voting in person. That's one-stop early voting, which would start October 15th and go through October 31. Each county has selected sites across the county to give as many people access to voting in early times as possible. And you will find that in Brunswick, there are 7 early voting sites. There are 9 in New Hanover, and there are 5 in Pender. And you can find those on your County Board of Elections website. Each of them are going to be open from 8 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. for weekdays, except where they are using the regular business hours for the Board of Elections site. Now, in both Brunswick and Pender, the actual office for the boards of elections are too small, too crowded for COVID-19. So they're going to be using the cooperative extension buildings in each of those counties. And so those weekdays will be fewer hours, because they're going to use regular business hours, but all the other sites will be from 8 to 7:30 p.m. Early voting is extremely popular and has been for many, many years. Somewhere between 50 to 60% of the voters have used early voting in the past, and we're not sure what the percentage will be this year, depending upon how many people use absentee voting, but that early voting sites are such that you can go to any one within your county to cast a ballot. You don't have to worry about whether or not you're in the closest one to you. You can go to any site within the county. Now, Saturday and Sunday hours are going to be available to us in all of our 3 counties. And that's the first time in a very, very long time that we're going to have that many hours on a weekend to actually vote. And taking advantage of those Saturday and Sunday hours for people who work full-time, it just is going to be so much easier. The Sundays are usually half days, but they're available. And then election day voting, that is November 3rd this year. And you have 13 hours of actual voting where you can go and vote. You have to go to your precinct. There's many more precincts than there are early voting sites. And your precinct may change because of COVID-19. Some of the precincts in the past have been too crowded for COVID-19 social distancing, so they're going to be changing some of those. But the boards of elections are sending out postcards to voters, and if your precinct has been changed, make sure you look at that postcard or check again your county website to make sure you know where your precinct is, or call. They're very accommodating that way. So election day voting is a long day. It's hard for the poll workers because it's a long day and they cannot break it up and have half of them at one time and half at another. If you work on election day, you work for the full day, so a full 13 hours. When it comes to curbside voting, that's available both during early voting and election day, and that's for people who are disabled, basically, and cannot ambulate into the polling place. So that particular instance, the poll workers come to the car. You'll find a specific area where the curbside is available, and they will come to the car and help you with voting in that setting. Be sure that you only use it if you're disabled and unable to ambulate into the voting spot. Then we have where you don't have to do in-person voting. You can do it by mail voting. They call it civilian absentee, and the civilian has to do with the fact that certainly our service people and others who are serving our country and other like ambassadors, etc., those have a slightly different rule. So for the majority of us, civilian absentee by mail voting is just voting by mail, but you can also take in your ballot to the Board of Elections, which we'll cover later. The ballots have already gone out for the first people who requested them. They have to be requested. The deadline to submit a request is October 27th, and we've put in parentheses there, it's too late. Given the challenges of the post office right now, you really need to ask for an absentee mail-in ballot now, and then when you get it, put it in the mail fairly early on. Don't wait till October 20th anything to put it in the mail to get it to the boards of elections, because they're going to be inundated with mail. If you want to hand deliver, you have to do it by November 3rd at 5 p.m. being the latest that they will accept them. All mail absentee ballots are due in the office by November 6th. And if you wait till November 3rd to put your absentee ballot in the mail, it might not get there by November 6th, and therefore it will not be counted. So do not wait. Make sure you have a voting plan and you do it early, but you've got lots of options. So when it comes to in-person voting, the local Board of Elections are going to do everything they can to make sure that they have adequate staff and equip as many precincts as possible for in-person voting. North Carolina law requires that they have a precinct per every so many thousand people. They change that from year to year, but we should have adequate precincts, and they're recruiting still for some poll workers, especially for those new positions that will include those sanitation specialists, increased curbside coordinators, and you have also people who will be outside and will be monitoring the distance between voters to make sure that the social distancing requirements are met. Early voting is a very popular way to vote, as I mentioned earlier, and we have almost 3 weeks before the election to take advantage. And early voting, all of the voting in person, they're going to be using all of the requirements that they can to make sure that the area is sanitized and protected, and the poll workers will have masks, and they will be equipped with sanitation wipes and so forth to keep the areas clean. You may need to vote in a new precinct, as I mentioned, so beware that if you vote out a precinct on election day, you will be asked to either move to the proper precinct or you'll have to vote a provisional ballot. Okay, if you would go on. Absentee by mail. There's a lot of misunderstanding. It doesn't matter if it's called absentee by mail or vote by mail or civilian absentee by mail. It's all one and the same, and it's a very safe option for voting for anybody who is concerned about COVID-19 and doesn't want to do it in person, or for anybody who has a medical condition that makes it harder for them to get into the polls. I know last year I had some surgery around this time, and I used mail-in voting for that reason. BOE, the Board of Elections, accept requests for absentee ballots now, and they have for quite some time. And they're already mailing out ballots, so you know, the sooner you ask for one, the sooner you will get one. You can still vote in person, even if you receive a mail-in ballot. If you've changed your mind, you say, I really do want to go to the polls after all, you can do it, but you better not use both methods for voting. I know somebody will be suggesting that maybe that would be an option, but actually it's illegal to do that, and it would be considered a felony if you did that. You need to expect that the Postal Service is going to be overwhelmed. Don't wait to the last minute to mail in your ballot. As I've said, you really want to give the post office time to get it where it needs to go so that your vote counts. And the Board of Elections is experiencing an increase in mail ballots, sometimes as much as 5 times as many as usual to 10 times as many as usual. In the past, in our counties, about 4 to 5% of the voters have tended to mail in ballots. That's been primarily by voters who find it really convenient, or by voters who have other reasons for not being able to get into the polls or wanting to get into the polls. So you have to have your ballot received in time. This year, it's going to need to be signed by the voter and a witness in order to count.
Gail, would you mind clarifying the process for hand delivering ballots to the Board of Election, and also how you would rectify a mail-in ballot if somebody's done something wrong, like forgotten to sign it?
Yeah, you would go to the next slide. I think I can maybe do a little bit better explanation then. Yeah, if you want, you can take your ballot into the Board of Elections. There are no drop boxes in North Carolina for putting in your ballots. You have to either mail them or deliver them in person. You can request a blank form to fill out to get that ballot by mail, email, or fax, or you can call the Board of Elections and ask them to send them. You can submit them in person, deliver them. I delivered with my husband our ballots. We gave our ballots this week in person after we filled them out. Of course, you can mail them. You can absentee requests, you can fax and email, and you can use the North Carolina State Board of Elections portal that is up now for you to fill out too. You need one witness for an absentee ballot return envelope, and on the outside of the envelope you will see that the witness needs to also put their address, and that can be easily forgotten. So you need one witness. In most years we have had to have 2 witnesses or a notary, but for this election they've made it so that it is only one witness. The witness can be anybody 18 years or older, and there's nothing wrong with having your spouse be your witness. But again, make sure that the spouse also puts the address in. You have to request a form for an absentee ballot no later than October 27th, and that is just too late, as I mentioned earlier. Ballots must be postmarked or hand delivered in person, and you can use a close relative to deliver your ballot, but they're going to be asked to sign a log too. Your husband or your wife or your daughter, or it has to be a very close relative. You could also have a legal guardian if you're not able to hand deliver and you want it delivered in person. but they will have to sign a log as well. And that has to be delivered no later than Election Day at 5 p.m. If your ballot has been mailed, it has to be at the Board of Elections by no later than Friday following Election Day. That's November 6th. And so you don't want to wait until November 3rd to put something in the mail. I mean, that's just asking for your ballot not to make it on in time. Be very diligent and do what you can to get your ballot there. Now you have a new system that we learned about just recently to track your ballot, and it's called Ballot Tracks. And if you put that into your web search, you will be able to fill out information once you've mailed your ballot in, and you can see where it is within the system. Now, Marla, did I answer everything you wanted?
You did. You got it just fine. Thank you. So I just want to make sure people realize that if they didn't have all their information right, that the Board of Elections would look over that mail-in ballot and try to get back with them and help them rectify.
That's a good point. One of the things that was done this year was a requirement that was added to make sure that if you have something missing on your mail-in ballot and it's coming through the mail and the Board of Elections looks at it, they're to help, they're to get in touch with you and try to remedy the situation so that you have a chance to correct what is wrong. So that's good. I mean, we've got a little bit of a fail-safe there. And then I'm going to turn it over to Barbara to talk about voter fraud.
Yes, so why should we talk about voter fraud? It's certainly a very big issue this year. There are many myths about it, and I can give you some truths about voter fraud. So how can voter fraud occur? It can occur at every stage of the electoral process. First, registering to vote. If you're not a citizen, don't register to vote. Don't say that you are a citizen. That is a felony, and you could go to jail for that. So be sure when you register to vote that you register correctly. When you obtain or use an absentee ballot, fraud can occur. People can collect absentee ballots. What I say down below is it's harvesting, and turn them in, and they fill them out and pretend that they're, doing it for individual people when they're really not doing that. You could vote fraudulently on site by going and pretending that you're somebody else who's actually registered to vote, but that person's away or sick or something, and you just go in and pretend that you're that person. That's really hard to do here in North Carolina because they will ask for your address, identification, and everything like that. Then when it comes to counting the ballots, and that moves to fraud by election officials who fraudulently count the ballots incorrectly, hide them, or do something bad. So there are types of ballot fraud. Harvesting is, as I said before, that's collecting the ballots from people and voting absentee as a group, turning them in for a group of people. You can falsify, again, who you are, and that can be, issue for fraud. Purging involves primarily election officials or others taking people off the rolls, the voter rolls, when they should not be taken off the voter rolls. We have a very strict system here in the state that protects people from being purged, but that is another issue around the country. Again, impersonation is pretending that you're somebody who registered to vote, but it's not you. Double voting involves if you were, especially if you move from one state to another. So you move from Virginia to North Carolina, you might still get a ballot from Virginia because they don't know that you moved and it was just forwarded. Don't go and vote in Virginia at the same time that you're voting in North Carolina. That's called double voting, and again, that's fraud. Hacking involves, primarily groups of people getting into the whole voting system through the internet and what have you, and falsifying things there rather than an individual person hacking. So anyway, voting fraud is a felony. Don't vote twice. That's a felony. You could pay a fine. You could go to jail. So don't do any of those things. The possibility of mail-in ballot fraud is where we're getting most of the attention these days. And voting by mail is nonpartisan. There's no advantage to any party. I've got here some common misperceptions, things that people have said and have been in the media, like quoting, I think a lot of people cheat with mail-in balloting. Well, how can you cheat with mail-in balloting? Mail-in voting is a terrible thing. I think if you vote, you should go. I won't tell you who said that. The United States cannot have all mail-in ballots. It'd be the greatest rigged election in history. People grab them from mailboxes, print thousands of forgeries, and force people to sign. Also, they forge names, some absentee, okay, when necessary, trying to use COVID for the scam. So these are just misconceptions, things that people have been saying to frighten people about or raising questions about voting by mail-in ballots. Okay, so what is the evidence for voter fraud? The Conservative Heritage Foundation has chronicled 33 cases of voter fraud in North Carolina from 1968 to 2019. Only 33 cases out of the millions and millions of people who have voted. And mostly it was people who were ineligible to vote, who actually went out and voted. Say somebody who had been in prison but hadn't finished their sentencing and their state doesn't allow them to vote, they just go and vote anyway. The Heritage Foundation found 14 cases of attempted mail fraud out of approximately 15.5 million ballots cast in the state of Oregon since the state started conducting elections by mail in 1998. So they collect everything through the mail, and they've had 14 cases of fraud. So people who tell you that mail-in ballots, it's all fraud, the facts don't represent that. And the Brennan Center for Justice says that the incidence of voter fraud has been studied numerous times. The consensus from credible research and investigation is that the rate of illegal voting is extremely rare, and the incidence of certain types of fraud, such as impersonating another voter, is virtually non-existent. So when people tell you there's all this fraud, ask them for the evidence. What is the evidence of all of this fraud? Thank you.
Okay, let's take a look at resources now. Say you're listening to us talk and you're like, wow, I can't remember all that. Where can I find that information? Well, there are several really good resources. One is our vote411.org website. It was developed by the League of Women Voters a few years ago and launched this year in May. The site won a Webby People's Award for Best Government and Civil Innovation. So it's quite a nice website. Vote 411 covers all 50 states. So to answer many of your voting questions, you'll need to go there and you'll have to type in your name and address so they'll know what state and what district you're in. Well, one of the unique things about 411.org is that it has a list of candidates who are running in your area with information about each. Now, all candidates were invited to submit their information. They can write about their skills and their aspirations should they win. Now, if you just see a name and no picture and no information, it's because for some reason that candidate decided not to submit information. 411 also has links that will assist you in finding how to request an absentee ballot, early voting times and sites, and precinct locations on election day. Now, that same information can be found on your county websites. Brunswick, New Hanover, and Pender County boards of elections are also great resources for your voting questions. They can connect you to the same things that you see on vote411.org, except for the candidate information. And the State Board of Elections can connect you to the same websites as well. So county and state are very well coordinated. Like your County Board of Elections website, The NC State Board of the NC State Board of Elections website is also easy to navigate, and it has information on absentee voting, early voting, precinct locations, and what your ballot looks like. If you have a valid North Carolina driver's license or ID, you can even register to vote there or change your name, address, or party affiliation within your current county of registration. Now, if you send in an absentee ballot and you want to track it, like Gail said, use ballot tracks. If you go into that website, you'll have to give your name because that they're going to have to know what ballot they're tracking, but just your name and your zip code, and they will tell you by email whether or not they've received your ballot and whether or not it was accepted. I did that just today, and it's just very comforting to know that your ballot's there and it's accepted. Now, if you have some problems finding links to specific information, you might want to search online simply by naming what you want. For example, when I was trying to find what my ballot looked like, I looked at the state website and I found it. And then a few days later, I looked at the county website and I found it. But I would get kind of lost in some of the information. So one day I just decided to type in my ballot in NC. And it popped me right to the link that I could type in my name and address and see what my ballot looked like. You could also do that if you're having trouble finding your absentee ballot request. So if you get kind of mixed up, just search for what you're looking for with a few words, and probably you'll pop right to that website. So these resources, vote411.org, the North Carolina State Board of Elections, your County Board of Elections website, or searching for a specific question online. They're all good ways to answer your voting questions. Now, if you just can't find the answers, you're like, I really don't understand this, please call your County Board of Elections. There's lots of people there who are very friendly, they're knowledgeable, and very, very helpful. So don't go without an answer. Call the County Board of Elections if you just can't find it. Another good source for information is the League of Women Voters website, lwvlcf.org. And there you'll find a calendar with information about meetings that we're having. Perhaps you want to see the information that's being discussed that day. One thing that's very important right now is that this coming week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, September 15th, 16th, and 17th, we'll be having 3 candidate forums. One on the school board election, one on the county commissioners election, and one on the state senate and state house districts. So if you would like to get into those meetings by Zoom, you can go to our calendar and you can find the Zoom access there. I think they will also be recorded and posted. So if you would like to see the forums in New Hanover County from next week, please take advantage of that. Now, next slide. There we go. Okay, League of Women Voters of the Lower Cape Fear. Who are we and what do we do? Well, at present, we have about 100 plus or minus members from Brunswick, New Hanover, and Pender counties. We're a diverse group, and we're continually seeking members and partners with similar goals. In the United States, the League grew out of the women's suffrage movement and was founded in 1920. This year and into next year, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, when women won the right to vote. As well, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary of being founded, and the local existence of the League in this area came in the 60s and 70s. The heart of our organization has always been to empower voters and defend democracy. We may take a stand on vital public issues, and that's after careful study and collection of information, but we are nonpartisan and never support or oppose candidates or parties. But our vision is for every person to have the knowledge and the information to participate in our democracy, and the power of women to make it so. The issues we might study, as I mentioned before, are reflected in our 5 action teams. Voter services. Now this year we've had to think way out of the box to register and educate voters. And thank goodness for the internet and all the ways that we can connect. Fair Elections Action Team. Special focuses for them this year have been advocacy for nonpartisan redistricting in North Carolina, which is important because redistricting should take place next year. And to go right along with that, they've been participating in getting out the word about the importance of the census. So those two things go together, the population and the redistricting. The Education Action Team has spent hours and hours studying and advocating for increased access to early childhood programs for the children in our state and supporting good mental health. The Environment Action Team, they spend much of their time keeping up with research and promoting clean air, clean water, recycling, and advocating against offshore drilling. Women's issues, they too have had a very busy year, advocating for women's health accessibility and for expanded Medicaid in the state, encouraging the passage of the ERA, celebrating the League's centennial, and even with all the starts and stops that we've experienced this year during the COVID. The League of Women Voters of the Lower Cape Fear welcomes new members. Both women and men are welcome to join. We encourage high school and college students to join with membership dues being waived. If you or someone you know is interested, please check out our website and let us know of your interest. Thanks very much.
Thank you for attending today and Vote 2020. If you have any other questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to the League as stated on our website. And you're welcome to share this recording with others if you'd like. Thank you very much.